favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. I note sitting down the back, we've got the Mayor and Philip Redmond. It's nice to have you both here. Conflicts of interest? Sorry.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. I had preferred an apology to you to leave early at 9 p.m.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll include that. If you're happy with that? Yeah, we'll include that. Conflicts of interest? Andy?
Do you want me to mention that I'm on the Board of Trustees for North London School?
Yes, because it would be appropriate you don't take part in that discussion. Yeah, thank you. That's appropriate. Confirmation of minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Appear to be none. Is someone prepared to move the adoption of those minutes? Moved by Jason, seconded Duncan. Put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Any matters arising? Appear to be none. Deputations and presentations. What we'll have this now, and then we'll take the item 6.2 while Sam Redmond's still here, because that's dealing with the Dudley Park, so it makes sense to take them on. So, all right then, if you'd like to come forward, Sam, it's welcome you both here. It's good to have you with us. If you could introduce us.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name's Sam Redmond. I'm the Youth Development Facilitator as part of the community team at the Council. And with me, I have Ruby Wilson, who's one of our Youth Council members. And she's here to kind of help me out when I have any gaps in memory. So, yeah, really great to be here. Thanks for having us. Really, we're here to present to you the report, which I am going to take largely as read, but in regard to the Waimakariri Youth Council Dudley Park redevelopment project. Bit of a mouthful, but it basically Youth Council were granted some funds through the annual plan to look into consultation and eventually installation of some features to enhance the Dudley Park area around the skate park. They've had a little bit of progress on that. They've done some consultation, and now we're here to update you all on what's happening, and also just noting that we would love to have a representative from the board as part of the project group, which the Youth Council have formed. So, apart from that, the recommendations, and apart from that summary, that's about what I have to say, but would welcome any questions that the board has for either of us.
Shall we deal with 6.2 now at the same time? We'll deal with 6.2 at the same time. I think that's what really Sam's spoken to. So if you look at on pages 43 to 81, we're dealing with that report. Kirsten.
Thank you, Sam and Ruby, and welcome. We noted that with COVID-19 the skate jam was cancelled, so we couldn't have any face-to-face engagement there, as you mentioned, and that was done online. Were you planning a face-to-face engagement now that we're hopefully back at level 1 in the subsequent consultation?
Yeah, I think absolutely that has to be a priority for us. You know, we Youth Council did what they could over the obviously the lockdown and everything in terms of doing some online stuff, but I don't think you can beat the face-to-face really, and so wanting to maybe do a skate jam again, fingers crossed that event can continue, and also consulting with neighbours and existing park users face-to-face ideally if we can, and that will be around updated plans based on this last round of consultation.
Further questions of Sam? Joan.
With the skate park, what is the security like for the young people, so that they're protected and that there's no adverse or nefarious things happening around for the security of the young people?
Yeah, I suppose that's a really important question. I think it gets to the heart of what the project really is about, which is about creating a more community-friendly space, a place where anyone from the community can be can feel safe. And there is evidence to suggest that having that intergenerational approach to an area is good for that kind of thing. Yeah.
Subsequent one. So, what steps are in place to monitor the security of the children skating at the park?
As far as I know, and I don't know for sure, but I don't know of any specific security measures that are in place. Had a couple of conversations with the police, and they are sometimes called down to the skate park, but I don't think there's anything that is an ongoing provision at this stage.
Any further questions? If not, we have some recommendations there. Come back to you, Monique. And when we get to moving it, remember that that they're seeking a representative, and that's C in their recommendations. So, right, Monique.
That's all right. I was going to ask, looking at your design, are you? I was curious about a few things about it. Is that all right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
I look like your solar charging seat. Does it work if someone sits on it?
That's a great question.
No, I'm just curious.
I don't know a huge amount about them. These were some ideas that Youth Council, I think, brainstormed and kind of threw around to see what would fit. And Green Space recommended some ideas. We've not done a huge amount of research into how they work just yet.
At the moment, it's not something that we're like.
Sorry, can you use the mic? It's very hard to hear.
At the moment, it's not something that we've looked into as a definite option that we're going to do, but it's definitely like an idea out there. But it's not a set step that we've put out to be taken soon. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And a few more things like those. Are you going to have artificial grass on these hump things you've got there for seating?
So yeah, that's another point that we're still figuring out. I think based on the last round of consultation, the mounted seating was there were a lot of fans of that idea. It'll depend on budget, I think, what that looks like. There's some really cool ones in Christchurch at the Margaret Mayhew Park that
Yes, they're cool.
could fit really well, but we need to investigate pricing and all that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. And I was thinking your area is really tiny that you're allowed to work in. I wondered if the council might consider letting you have a bit more space because it's such a tiny wee spot. But anyway, especially if you're thinking maybe along the lines of a playground or bigger stuff as well, there's really no room to put much there.
Did you want to say anything to that, Ruby?
We have been talking about that because we were wanting to put in something that would kind of include the younger children around because obviously making it a more community friendly, we want to be able to have all ages there, not just like we don't want 5-year-olds skating with the 14-year-olds and being run into or something. And so we have been looking at trying to figure out a way to have like a playground or some sort of play area for the younger children.
Right.
But yeah.
Thank you.
And I think a big part of the project is obviously limited funding. So wanting to inspire further work down the road. And so we, the project group have identified kind of three big things, which were the seating and what else did we have? Ruby, you might have to help me out there. The seating, a barbecue, and some kind of kids area, and then recommendations for the future if things could continue. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? We have a recommendation. Is someone prepared to move something and nominate a member? Or is any member like to be on that working party with the Youth Council? Monique would. There we are. So is someone prepared to... Jason, you're moving the recommendation with Monique. Yeah. Okay. We're seconded by Paul. Do you wish to speak to it? No. Paul?
Yeah, I think it's a good project, and I think Monique will fill the role pretty good for it.
Anyone else? All right, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, declare it carried. Thanks, Sam and Ruby, for coming along, and keep up your good work with the Youth Council. So that's good.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Right, we move now to item 6.1, Flexton Road, pages 19 to 42, something that the board's moderately familiar with this. And Dawn, you've got a recommended addition or change to your recommendations. Emma, would you like to borrow Paul's mic and read it out? We'll just let the board know what you're suggesting.
Okay, so there's a new recommendation that will come in between B and C will go to D. So the recommendation is now isn't a C. Recommends a new C. Recommends to the council that it removes the curb and channel at the northern end of the western roadside to allow consideration of informal parking, noting the RSA has expressed concern regarding this, and noting the work will be tendered with the curb and channel included.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right,
With the
thanks,
clarification that the RSA means road safety audit, not return association.
That's thanks, Don. That's quite useful. Road safety audit. Okay, now we've clarified that's not the.
Thank you.
Just for clarity, that's a new C and everything slips down one.
That's correct.
Just
That's
be
correct.
clear. All right, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been in front of you on a number of occasions previously.
Can you use your mic, Don? Sorry, it's not that easy to hear.
Number of occasions previously. The major change which you will have noted from the last time we spoke to you on this is that unfortunately we've needed to take out the reference to a shared path. The provisions that are necessary around a shared path are significantly higher than a footpath, and to try as we might, we were unable to come up with a framework that really allowed that to be installed in the room we have, and it became clear that something needed to give. So I think you'll be well aware that Fraser in particular has bent over backwards to look at a range of different options to try and fit everything in. We thought we had a solution by shifting to the east, but it became clear again through our road safety auditing process that the only way we could make the roads safe, the eastern shared path safe, would have been effectively to have removed all parking from the eastern side. The site distances required for it to be a shared path were such that there was really no parking left. So when faced with that as the stark reality, we have come back to you recommending that the footpath, that we install a footpath rather than a shared path. We have had the opportunity to discuss that briefly with some of the businesses, and generally it has got support. We're well aware though that we have only spoken to some of the affected parties, and there will be many cyclists out there who are disappointed in this decision, but on balance it was something we felt was the only way really forward. The most recent change that we have here is to allow further opportunity to consider some degree of informal parking at the northern end, but we have noted that that still does need to get through the hurdles of a road safety audit. One possible solution is that if the tendered price does come in significantly under, then potentially we could use some of that money to assist to make, for instance, put a retaining structure or something on that length of the drain to allow us more space to allow a more safer parking area there. But in the meantime, we're really just allowing parking to take place here rather than, or this would leave it open to that option. We as staff would still recommend that no parking be allowed up there, but we're aware that that would be a very unpopular decision, and so in order to give you a solution that possibly will work, we've come up with this additional recommendation for you to consider. Fraser may well have some additional points he wants to add.
Fraser.
Just with reference to any cycle facility, although no specific provision for cyclists has been made, staff have considered alternative options for integrating the wider Southbrook area into the Rangiora cycle network. One option could be to construct a new facility from the proposed Flexton Fernside intersection along Fernside Road, with potential connections to the Passchendaele track via the new Daniel Smith development, and links into Rangiora via South Belt and Townsend Road. And I think Don's pretty much covered everything off on the parking front.
Okay. Right. I also acknowledge the fact that we had a discussion. You invited Paul as a portfolio holder and the Mayor and myself to a briefing to discuss the way forward. I appreciate that earlier on. Right, questions, Joan?
Just going back to the western side and the drain running along there. Oops, we need someone to put the lights on. I understand that there still needs to be some additional reparation work in there because of the perhaps the vulnerability of some part of it collapsing. Is that true? To enable parking on the western side.
To enable a parking facility that we were comfortable to say met appropriate parking standards, yes, you're correct. And so that's not what this recommendation is really putting in front of you. It's just effectively leaving the curbing out, which would allow people to park there. There would be room for cars to park, but there is not room for a footpath, for instance, for them to safely move along that side and then cross the road to the eastern side where there is a footpath. So it is not something that ticks all of the boxes we would normally require to be ticked before we allocated a formal parking area. So if we were to formalise that more, it would require some sort of retaining structure. That's not part of the recommendation in front of you at the moment. It's just allowing that option to potentially be progressed.
So is that likely to occur as you develop down there? Is there likely to be extra costs incurred in securing and making secure the drain on the western side down there, just to allow for parking or for the road?
If the resolutions as put in front of you are passed, we will be installing a curb up the majority of the western side, which would eliminate parking. And for parking in the future to be allowed on the western side would mean pulling out that curb and channel. So that is something the council may consider in, for instance, 20 years. It's probably not something they would consider in, say, 3 or 4 or 5 years. So if this is passed as is in front of you now, there will be no parking on the western side. That is not to limit councils, as I say, not to limit council's future decision making. The exception is when we say at the northern end, we're effectively meaning between the last driveway heading north. So there is probably around about 10 car parks we can fit in there, which we'd not be widening or strengthening. We would just be allowing people to continue to do what they do now, which is to pull onto that verge.
Right. It's just, I understand that, on that eastern side there's these huge power poles.
Is this a question?
Yes, it will be. Mitigate the widening of it to a cycleway. So there's no other option really apart from going to the west side and covering the channel, which of course is more costs. Is that correct?
There are 2 other options, which again as staff we didn't consider were the right outcome. The first would be that we remove the parking on the eastern side, would allow a shared path down there. The second would be we do away with the central median, which the feedback right from the start of our consultation process has indicated that a central median is a key part of whatever upgrade that local community would like to see there. The ability to turn right, either on or off Flexton Road, is a key part of what the businesses are looking for. So yes, there are certainly options of using that minimal space in different ways, but it would mean giving up something like either the parking or the central median to achieve it.
Any further questions?
Thank you for that. I'm not.
Kirsten. Then Duncan.
Don, looking through your risks and stakeholders consulted, you've noticed businesses, you've noticed Keep Rangiora Beautiful, you've got the Water Zone Committee, there's a whole list here. Where are the road users in this submission list who come from Silverstream and Mandeville and Ahoka and those areas, in terms of this quite dramatic change to exclude cyclists, to not have a dedicated cycling facility?
They haven't been consulted, and effectively I think it is a reflection of the time frame we have available to us. This money will end of June. The time frame we're on now is already, as you'll see from your recommendations, we are tendering next week and not actually waiting for the council meeting prior to going to tender, with the potential risk that if the council disagrees with our current approach, then we would be withdrawing the tender at that stage and accepting the consequence of that decision. But this has been right really from the start, a very, very tight time frame to achieve, and unfortunately we haven't been able to achieve, I guess, all of the elements we might like to have otherwise built around a project like this.
Bearing in mind that the council has a sustainability strategy, and you talk about that we have an aim for good linkage and active travel options, how will this be seen in the community as almost going backwards to areas of not progressing cycle lanes? How do you believe this will be perceived?
I think there will certainly be an element of the community who will be disappointed and see this as a backward step. I would potentially suggest that, and I think Fraser has used the terminology a few times, that effectively we're trying to fit a 20-metre corridor into 16 metres. And so we have, right from the start, very limited space. With regard to the cycleway being the thing that has gone, we believe that is probably the best of the elements that could have disappeared from the design. And I think, as Fraser said, there are opportunities for potentially other routes other than other than Flexton Road. The main argument against that is that the people in Flexton Road itself may be cyclists as well. But if you were, for instance, travelling down Flexton Road, once you get to the roundabout, you'll be on a very difficult, well, not a very difficult, you'll be on a road which is not well suited for cyclists. And we have Lineside Road not far away with Passchendaele. The roundabout will cater for cyclists. This design that you will see in front of you does have pedestrian access between the Flexton urban area, the Southbrook industrial area, and the Flexton Fernside roundabout, which we are hopeful that as land becomes developed along that length, we would look to widening that and extending that cycleway if that was going to improve a link. And one option for it to do that, it would be to zigzag it out through the current resource recovery park out to Passchendaele and link up there. But either way, probably Fernside East could well be a link which gets developed into the future to link between Flexton Fernside and Lineside. We do 100% appreciate this is not ideal, which is why you will have seen 3, 4 or 5 versions of this plan come back to you which attempted to fit it all in, but unfortunately we have hit that brick wall where something has to give.
Could this group actually make a recommendation, add it to the motion, that an investigation into an alternative cycle link could be undertaken by staff? Would that be possible?
That would certainly be possible, and in fact, maybe something you do want to do. And I would remind the board from its all boards briefing it received relatively recently that there is a cycle network plan currently being developed, which will be coming to the board and to the council in coming months as being suitable for consultation. And then there will be widespread community consultation following on from that. So they are exactly the types of opportunities that I would encourage this board to utilise to make comment for the council's benefit.
Duncan.
Don, to the best of my ability, I've tried to listen to your rationale regarding the Western parking issue, and you're obviously at the very top end allowing 10 people parks. Is the wording in I correct then, in your recommendations? Notes that no informal parking be proposed.
Good point.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes.
I was getting confused.
I
That
is
could come out.
indeed incorrect now if with this latest one coming in.
So that'll come out, Don.
Thank you.
We'll take I out of that.
Okay.
Everything will
Thank
move up one. Okay. It's Monique and then Joan.
I see that a cafe there suggested that you have short-term parking, 10, 15-minute parking on. Are you considering like limiting the parking on the roadside to keep things moving, so people working there will presumably park off the street?
Yes, we have discussed that both with submitters and also internally. We certainly are considering it, but we do note that it is a completely different process which would require a resolution of council, and there's a formal parking bylaw which would need amending in order to achieve that. So it's not something we're putting on the table at this stage, but it is certainly something we would hope would be considered to allow that short-term customer parking rather than all-day staff parking.
Joan.
Just a thought. I think.
Sorry, is it a question?
Yes, it is. I remember, and you can correct me or not, please. My question is, am I correct when we went through the NZTA when it was scooters and walking on pathways and cycling on pathways, that it was agreed that people could travel on a walkway at no more than 15 kilometres per hour? Am I right or wrong?
To clarify, there is a proposal by the current government to declare or to make a new ruling which is called accessible streets, and if passed, that will allow some degree of usage of that footpath. It is still uncertain exactly how far that will extend. Some commentators on that would like to see it limited to children only rather than adults, etc., but it is uncertain where that will fall. If it does fall open slather, that all cycles and those matters can use, scooters can use the footpath, that wouldn't change what we're recommending you do. It potentially would just allow another avenue for those using Flexton Road to potentially remove themselves one step. For us to, however, declare it, as I said before, for us to declare it a shared path would raise another level of compliance issues which we couldn't get to, but if that law comes through, that would then just allow the use of that footpath with no extra work from us.
Okay, if there are further questions? No further questions? Just before someone moves it, just get Emma again to remind us of the change, and that'll include taking out I as well.
Okay, so there's a new thing. Recommends to the council that it removes the curb and channel at the northern end of the western roadside to allow consideration of informal parking, noting the road safety audit has expressed concern regarding this, and noting the work will be tendered with the curb and channel included. And then it goes on, and I is removed.
Yeah, so they all slip down, one an eye goes. All right, so someone prepared to move, moved by Paul, seconded by Robbie. Do you wish to speak to Paul?
I just think it needs to be, there's people anxiously waiting for it to happen, so the sooner it happens now, the better, and we've probably done the best we can out of the width we can do, so well done.
Thank you. Rob? Kirsten?
I'd like to move an amendment just in addition to the motion, please. That we request staff to investigate an alternative cycling route to connect with the Passchendaele path.
So that'll become a new, whatever it is at the bottom.
So I just need a seconder.
If we're seconded for that, Andy. Okay.
Just quickly speaking to that, I understand we're between a rock and a hard place on this one. It is a narrow corridor for a very, very important route. We have to get it right. It's really vital that the parking, the turning is protected because it is a major traffic thoroughfare for us. However, I think we'd be sending the wrong signal if we didn't indicate that we think cycling is really, really important in this area. We had a submission to the Rangiora Town Centre hearing specifically about this for people coming from our Hoka-Mandeville area, and with the transition to e-bikes, it makes it a lot more accessible for people to actually, even those who aren't super fit, to actually use cycles. And we need to encourage, as it said, good linkages and active travel options going forward. It's one of our policies. So just by adding this, it means that we are seriously looking at another option, and it may mean that we may have to accelerate that option to try and make that work. But I appreciate the speed and the time frame that you're under, and it's a very important piece of work.
Andy's second. Andy, do you wish to add to it? No. The amendment's open for discussion. Is there any discussion? Robbie.
Thank you. I'll support the amendment. Board Member Barnett's quite right. There was a submission with regard to accessing by way of cycle. However, I would dread to think that this would in any way, shape or form delay the project as it stands in the substantive motion, and I don't think it will. So on that basis, I'm prepared to support it with the understanding that yes, staff can investigate, but not ancillary work on top of this. And but we do need to have our eyes wide open. So
I think the mover of the amendment agrees with you there too. So that's board's position. That's not to hold up the balance. Right, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, carried. Declare it carried. We now come back to the new motion. Anyone exercise the right of reply? Happy? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare it carried. We've dealt with 6.2, so we'll move on. Thank you, Don. We'll move on to 6.3, the Ashley Street car park in New World lease. Simon. Pages 82 to 87.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, board members. I see you have a very large agenda tonight, so I won't read it word for word. Essentially, the report in front of you proposes that New World here in Rangiora would pay for an extension, a reconfiguration of the Ashley Street car park, which sits directly to the east of the supermarket. That reconfiguration would produce 2 car parks. That's the maximum amount of car parks a reconfiguration of that car park could actually produce. With them doing that and paying for that, they would then like to lease from us those 2 car parks that are created to provide click and collect services for their customers. There are a number of good reasons in the report stated for why click and collect is good, and you'll all be familiar with the contactless arrangements since COVID, so that's one very good reason. The other good reason is in addition to creating 2 new car parks, so us not losing any car parks, you'll find that their occupancy rate will actually be higher. So a lot of the customers of New World not only use the New World car park to the north, but of course the council's car park to the east, and that's why we have some trolley bays in that car park to prevent trolleys being left in our car parking spaces. New World have told us that in a supermarket such as this, the average turnover of a customer is around 20 minutes, but with the contactless click and collect, it's more like 5 minutes. So in addition to producing the 2 new car parks, a percentage of their customers will start to use those car parks and be more frequent turnover, therefore reducing the impact on our own car parks as well. So we think that it's a positive move. It increases the level of service that we have from the supermarket in our central town centre. It doesn't have an impact on our car parking supply. If anything, it improves occupancy very slightly, and it doesn't have a cost to council. So hence we're recommending that that the community board approve this report. More than happy to take any questions that community board members might have.
Paul.
Yeah, these 2 car parks were proposed to lease to New World. If things change, there'll be still parking restrictions on it. They won't be able to use it for a all-day parking. Is that correct?
Yes, very good question. So you'll note some conditions in the report that we would use as parameters for a lease. Certainly they would have to use it for click and collect services only. We would also include some out clauses. So if any future development of the car park was to be desired by the council, we would have an ability to break that lease and then continue on with our plans as a council. And we would make sure that's negotiated in with New World as appropriate.
Thank you. Further questions? Appear to be none. We have a recommendation. Is someone happy to or prepared to move it? Joan, moved by Joan, seconded by Morris. Joan, do you wish to speak to it?
No, it sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Morris?
I totally agree. Sounds quite a reasonable idea to me to have, so we should go with it.
Any other speakers? Right, I put the recommendation. Sorry, is that Jason? Sorry.
I forgot to clear, but I might be slightly compromised on this, so might I abstain?
We'll note a belated...
My apologies.
No, that's all right. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, carried. You can tell your boss you voted against it. Right, item 6.4, update of Community Board Standing Orders, Sarah, pages 88 to 166. Who's dealing with that? Okay. Right.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. This report is basically just formalising what we have been doing for the last couple of months, and including the ability for boards to meet electronically or through technical means, or if a member is unable to attend a meeting for any reason and desperately wants to talk at the meeting, they are able to come in through technical abilities. So that's the only real change in these new standing orders, just making official the ability to use platforms like Zoom and Teams and various and sundry other items. I'll take the report as read and I will answer any questions.
Any questions? I've got one for you, Kay. The report is silent on a code of conduct committee, as I understand it.
This actually came up last night, so I'm hoping I can answer you. The code of conduct, if each board already has a code of conduct. So if there is a desire for the board to look at a problem and require the use of a code of conduct committee, the first item they would need to do is create a code of conduct committee, and then once they've done that, they will then have to use that code of conduct committee to deal with the matter at hand. There's no expectation that the code of conduct committee need be made up of board members if they don't wish to. They could refer the matter to the council's code of conduct committee. There are various sundry reasons and methods of dealing with something like that. But in this particular document, they're leaving it to be discussed as and when it is required.
Okay. Any other questions? Duncan.
Page 119, 9.11. Kay or perhaps Jim yourself, since you've been mayor, withdrawal of an agenda item. Is that a very common occurrence? Because obviously we would probably pride ourselves on, we're pretty bit lazy at times, the board members generating their own agendas or generating their items, but under what circumstance would a CEO remove an agenda item?
Well, normally from a community board perspective, if there was an item on the agenda and for whatever reason the staff weren't quite ready to proceed and needed more information, it could be I've experienced withdrawn for that basis, and the chair clearly would agree.
Yes.
I don't know of any other reason.
It's usually used if other information comes up after the report has been signed off, and that information could impact on the recommendations, or there's something that maybe has been left out of the report that the report writer feels the members really ought to know. That's often when an item is removed and then brought forward to the next meeting.
Liz.
Just to maybe help with some context around that. So you're probably aware management team get to review the report. So the reason it's quite rare is because any issues of that kind of nature that get brought up are normally caught before they end up getting onto either a council or a community board agenda. So it would be in really rare circumstances that would probably happen.
Yes, fine, thank you.
Any other questions of Kay? I've actually gone right through it, which might surprise you, and I found that it tidied up some messes that had been created, particularly in the right of reply area where it had been changed in the last council that a mover of an amendment had a right of reply, so the chair of the time thought, and that's been tidied up, so I think it's a bit loose for the code of conduct in my view, but that's another issue. No other questions? Someone prepared to move something? Moved by Paul, seconded by Robbie. Do you wish to speak to it? No, Robbie? All right, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. The contrary, declare it carried. Right, now we come to item 6.5, on pages 167 to 169. That's on the quarry. Okay.
This is an item that you're all very familiar with at the moment. And due to the fact that there is some uncertainty of when this item will be, when the quarrying application will be notified, given that it's usually only 20 days, if it happens just prior to your board meeting, you might be a bit caught for time. So a request came through from both the chair and Matt Bacon, saying that to make sure that we cover that eventuality, that this report be written, and basically allowing the chair and two other people to compose the submission with the help of an expert. Obviously it would be circulated prior to it being lodged informally and then brought to the following meeting to be ratified. It's belt and braces, because if there is plenty of time, you probably might not need this. Just up to you.
Now there is a change in recommendation for you. I'll just read it carefully. A, receives the report. B, this is a new B, delegates authority to the chairperson, board member so-and-so, and board member so-and-so to work with an appropriately qualified advisor to submit the board's submission in opposition on resource consent. And C, that the board submission be submitted at a subsequent meeting, or the alternative we oppose, you don't make one. So I'll hand this to you, Emma. So that's quite a late change, but we will need some assistance here, and so that's why I brought forward the change to work with an appropriate qualified advisor. Morris.
What is a qualified advisor? Is that a staff member or someone outside? Or?
Look, can we take it as in committee? We're not in committee. I didn't want to go down this road at this stage, but it'll be someone that